This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good night, Shabbos Rabbi says we prepare for Parshas Chukas. Hava aleinu l'taiva. We have in the Parsha that Moshe and that Klal Yisrael spoke badly about Moshe. They spoke lashon hara, and God sent against them the snakes, and people were being bitten, and people died, and the Torah says, make a fiery serpent. Place it on a pole. And it will be that whoever is bit, he will see it and live. Moshe made a copper snake. Now the question is, why did he make a copper snake? There's so many things you can make a snake out of. You can make a snake out of clay. You can make a snake out of gold. If I had a snake, if I wanted to make a snake, I would make a golden snake, or at least a silver snake. But why a copper? Why copper? By Yisimeu alanes, he put it on a pole, and God never instructed Moshe to make a copper snake. Hashem just said, make a snake. So Moshe makes a, why copper? By Yisimeu alanes. Yes.
The shorish of Nechoshes is the same as Nachash.
So
that's why you make a copper snake.
Why is that a reason to make a copper snake?
Because it's Hashem's Nachash and Nechoshes.
By the way, he didn't tell him to make a Nachash.
Okay, also a good question.
Right.
Says Hashem, if the snake bit someone, and he would look at the copper snake and live. Says Rashi, Moshe was never told to make it copper. Moshe says to himself, God told me a snake, I'll make it out of copper. Lashon noifel al lashon. A word that sounds like a word, like Rabbi Yosef says, Zal lashon Rashi midivei Rabbeinu. In other words, Moshe said, God told me Nachash, and Nachash sounds like Nechoshes. So it's a cute thing. I'll fulfill his words. Says Ramban, I don't know what got into Rashi today. what kind of explanation is this? God told him Nachash, so he said, I'll make it out of copper because it sounds like it. First of all, the Ramban asks, God never told Moshe to make a Nachash. What did he say?
Sarah.
Make a saraf. What the Chachamim, what Chazal mean is that God said saraf, but the real name of snake is Nachash. So even though God didn't say Nachash, God said saraf, but a saraf is a Nachash, so much made out of Nachashas.
What is a saraf?
Saraf is a fiery serpent, a certain kind of snake that we're going to see has red eyes and a fat head, and is really dangerous. A fiery serpent.
Does it look like anybody here?
Where did you get
that? Don't point to anyone else specifically, right? The Hanira Be'enai, says Ramban, B'soid hadavar hazeh. Let me tell you what I think the secret here is. And in general, let's try to understand. Here the person got bit by a snake. So what do? Maybe give antibiotics, vitamins, minerals. Why? Oh, you got bit by a snake? Look at a snake on a pole. Well, what does one got to do with the other? It's the way of the Torah. All the ways of the Torah are miracles within miracles. Tasir hanezek b'mazik. Sometimes, when you're harmed, the harm could be removed by the mazik itself. The therapy achoyle b'machlaya, and the sickness could be cured by the sickness. In other words, God's ways are so miraculous that certain things could have the opposite effect. Here, where the snake will be the cure itself. For example, when they came to Mara and they didn't have water to drink because the water was bitter, so they threw in wood. Chazal say that wood was bitter wood. So it was a nes mitach nes. Not only did the wood make the water sweet, but they used bitter wood to make the water sweet. In other words, what you would think would have the opposite effect it was the exact opposite. V'chein ba'melech Elisha b'mayim. Elisha put salt into the water to make it drinkable. V'yadua, it is well known. Now listen, to get a load of this, the Ramban explains, in general, the effects of somebody who is bit by a dog or a snake that had, had rabies, right? V'yadua, a rabid animal. B'darkei refuos. It's known in the ways of healing. Shekol neshuchei balei ha'eras. Anyone bitten by a poisonous creature, yistachnu, they'll be in danger. Beroisam oisam berois demusam. If someone has been by a rabid snake, a rabid dog, if they see the dog, or they see a picture of the dog, that could endanger their lives. That once you're bitten by it, just the mere memory of it, or thought of it, could kill you. Ad ki neshuchei ha'kelev ha'shoita, to the point where someone has been by a rabid dog, v'chein shar ha'behimas ha'shotos, or any other kind of wild animal, im yabitu b'mayim, the doctors say, that if these people who are bit look in the water, they're going to start imagining the shadow of the dog, that could kill them. So the Gemara in Yuma says, if someone's been by a rabid dog, don't look into the water, because your mind is going to play on you. You're going to see the dog in the water, and you're going to die. The doctor said, don't even say dog to them, don't even say snake to them. Their soul will cling to that thought. It will not separate from it to the extent that it will kill them. Ukvar hiskiru davar menusa miniflois hatoilada. They've already mentioned through experimentation the wonders. Listen to this. Doctors say that through experimentation, that if someone became almost insane by being bitten by a wild animal, im yekubal hashdein shalai b'chli zechuches, if you then collect this person's urine in a glass tube, yira b'shasen demus gurei klavim ketanim. If you look in the urine, you will see little pups, little dogs in the urine. This is what the Ramban writes. So then the Ramban says, what, are they actually there? No. Because if you filter out the hashdein, the meiraglayim, then taver hamayim b'matlis v'tesadana, like timtza v'hem shum roshim kal. If you try to strain it out, filter it out, you're not going to find anything in the filter. If you then pour it back into the glass, the pups will be back there. I never tried it. But the Ramban is saying, you put it there a little while, not the guy, the scientist, the observer. Says Ramban, this is an amazing illustration of the powerful effects of the human psyche. Where this person, just by being bit by a dog, where it overtakes their consciousness, their mind, the effects of mind on the physical health. Okay? This is an amazing wonder of the human psyche. And therefore, you would expect that if Jews were bitten by snakes, and they were in physical harm, the worst thing to do was for Moshe to put an image of the snake on a pole and everyone should look at it. That would knock them out. No. Moshe shows it's not the snake that kills, it's God, and it's God who heals. And if God wants, He could take the picture of the snake, and that could be the source of the refuah. He says, if being that this is all true, it should have been appropriate, it should have been fitting, that those Jews that got bit by the snake, hasrafim, they should not look at snakes. They shouldn't mention it. They shouldn't think about it. But God commanded Moshe to make an image of a saraf. Why a saraf? Because that's what was biting them. That was killing them. Now, says the Ramban, Moshe didn't make nachash out of nachoshes because nachash sounds like it. But rather, fiery serpents have red eyes, have a wide face, and their necks look like copper. And therefore Moshe said, why does God want me to make this image? He wants me to make image so that people see that God could work so miraculously that even the thing that should naturally knock them out will cure them. So therefore it's most logical to make the image of the saraf out of a material that looks most like a saraf. What looks most like a saraf? What material? Not gold, not silver, nechoshes. Because that is what a saraf looks like.
Well, they have the very venomous snake with a copperhead, which has that kind of color.
Oh, very good. And now we could understand what Chazal mean when they say Lashay, Neufel on Lashan. It's not just, Nechoshes sounds like Nachash. No. The point Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to make is, the more the Jews think about a snake, the more logically it should be harmful to them. And therefore I'm demonstrating more God's ability to cure miraculously. So if I could make a snake, if I could make this out of Nechoshes, that should naturally remind them more about snakes because of the language usage. And if even so it cures them, that shows, the Ramban concludes, Ki Hashem, Memis, Umachaya, God is the one who harms, God is the one who heals. Okay. Oh, we're going to get to that. How did you know? How did you know? Okay. So, by the way, just a brief side point. It's very interesting. The Torah uses a lashon, pasuk tes, Vayas Moshe Nechash Nechoshes, V'haya. Now we know, whenever it says Vayehi, Vayehi is a lashon of Sar. Whenever it says V'haya, Simcha. So why would it use a lashon of Simcha, V'haya im nashach hanachoshes ish? What Simcha was there when someone was bit by a snake? No, but it's not going on V'haya, V'hibit, V'haya, V'hibit. It's not going on the looking, it's going on the being bit. What Simcha is it to be bit by a snake?
Not the simple of being bitten, it's the fact that he looks up to the snake that he's living.
Right? What? But it says V'haya.
Oh yeah, the simcha, because he's alive. He was able to look up.
As says the Meshech Chochmah, the Simcha is like this.
Okay.
That for some people, being bit by the snake was a good thing. Why? Because it says anyone who is bit by a snake, if they would then look at the image, they would live. But what about a guy, now he has a terminal illness, right? But now, if he's bit by the snake, and he looks at the Nechash, then he's going to live. So for him, the ability to get bit, it was a Lashon Simcha. For him, it was a Simcha. That's what the Meshech Chochmah says. Therefore, if he had a chayla from natural causes, and he was about to die, if he would be bit, if he would have the good fortune of being bit by one of these snakes, he could be cured. That's why perhaps the Torah uses a Lashon of V'haya, and not a Lashon of Vayihi. And says the Meshech Chochmah, Upashat. It's Pashat. This is why the Torah uses a Lashon of V'haya. Now, very interestingly, this copper snake lasted for many, many years. The Jews brought it into Eretz Yisrael, and it lasted all the way until Chizkiyahu HaMelech. However, Chizkiyahu HaMelech destroyed the copper snake of Moshe Rabbeinu in Sefer Malachim Beis, Parak Yerches, Pasuk Daled, who Heiser Sabamos. He removed the high places, the Shiberes HaMatzevos. He broke the monuments, V'charas es ha'ashera, he cut down the Asherah tree, V'chitas nechash ha'nechoshes, and he ground up, he crushed the copper snake, Asher asa Moshe, that Moshe made. Why did he crush it? Ki ad hayamim ha'hela, because until those days, hayu b'nei Yisrael mekatrim lo. The Jews would offer kataras to the copper snake. Vayikra lo, and they called it nechushtan. So here's a question. Number one, what does the word nechushtan mean? Simply means our snake, or our copper. Why did they call it our copper? Number two, well, if the Jews were worshipping it all the way until the time of Chizkiyahu HaMelech, why did anyone bother getting rid of it until then? So what's going on over here? Chizkiyahu HaMelech was one of the later kings of the Malchei Yehuda. What happened?
So David would have allowed them to...
that's the question he's asking.
Well, we know Asa, King Asa, we know got rid of all the Avodah Zarah in Eretz Yisrael. King Yehoshaphat got rid of all the Avodah Zarah. So why didn't they bother getting rid of the Nechash HaNechoshes of Moshe Rabbeinu?
That's the question the rabbi is asking.
It wasn't worshipped
until his time.
It says Ki ad hayamim ha'ema, until his days Bnei Yisrael were makatrim lai. Sounds like they worshipped it. So the Gemara in Chulin, on Dav Vav Amud Beis, going on to Dav Zayin Amud Aleph, On this pasuk of in Malachim that talks about Chizkiyahu HaMelech destroying the copper snake of Moshe, B'chitais nechasha nechoshes asher asa Moshe, ki ad hayom ha'ema ha'yivanesam mekachim loy v'yikro loy nechoshtan. Efshir, asked the Gemara, is it possible? Ba'asa v'loy bi'aroi. Asa came. Asa got rid of all the avodah zarah, and he didn't destroy this. Ba'yehoshafat v'loy bi'aroi. Ba'loy kol avodah zarah shaba'olam asa v'yehoshafat bi'aram. Ella.
Clearly, it wasn't avodah zarah.
No, well,
Ella, says Chizkiyahu, Machon Hanichulai Avoisav Lihis Gaderbai. His parents left him room. Lihis Gaderbai, says Rashi, Lihis Gaderbai. His parents left him a way to have a mark of distinction. In other words, had his parents done everything, then what's little old Chizkiyahu going to do with his life? He's going to be a nobody. At the end of his life, they're going to write a biography. Chizkiyahu, he didn't do anything. So his parents wanted him to have a stellar also. They wanted to give him something. So they left it up to him to destroy, because otherwise he would be a nobody.
But he also destroyed the Bumos and the Matsevos and the Sheros, not just the snake. He apparently did a lot.
They left him a big stellar.
unfortunately,
They left him a big stellar.
Unfortunately, what happened afterwards is Menashe came along.
He was going to be the Mashiach, possible Mashiach.
Yeah.
Yeah, why? Because his parents gave him a stellar. If the parents wouldn't have given him a stellar, who knows what would have happened to that kid.
I don't know.
So this is a very strange answer of the Gemara. The parents left Avodah Zarah because they wanted to give the kids his parents, Chizkiyahu.
What about Sennacherib? That was his time.
Yeah, but his parents wanted to give him something to show his mark of distinction, which is very strange. Here, I mean, if it's Avodah Zarah, then they're required to destroy it, right? It says, V'ashereim tisrufun ba'esh. What kind of reason is enough? But I want to give my kids a chance to do something good. If you have a responsibility to do something good, then you got to do it. We don't find that. What does the Gemara mean? That Makam Yinichalai Avodah L'Skader, but why didn't anybody before him destroy?
It wasn't avodah zarah. They didn't hold avodah zarah.
It wasn't a
I know what Patron Lomi, but obviously all of the Malachim, the good Malachim that we had, if this Nakash actually survived, didn't consider it avodah zarah. But they would have gotten rid of it.
No, but that's not the Gemara says. The Gemara says they were worshipping it. So why didn't they destroy it? They didn't destroy it because they wanted to give their son an opportunity to show his mark of distinction. Let's see another thing.
Yeah, what's the
The Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos, look at number 7 for a moment.
What about it?
Well, hopefully we'll get to that, okay? The Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos on Daf Nun Vav Amud Beis, Rabbi Yehuda Ve'es habamos asher al pnei Yerushalayim, the high places, the bamos, the forbidden altars that were on the face of Yerushalayim, asher miyamin lahar hamishcha. Actually, the lashon of the Navi is har hamashchas. Asher bana Shlomo melech Yisrael, that Shlomo, the king of Klal Yisrael, built la'ashtara shikut sidonim. Hear what the Navi says. Shlomo HaMelech built altars for avodah zarah. So the pasuk says that Yoshiyahu destroyed them. Shlomo built the avodah zarah altars, and Yoshiyahu destroyed them.
What does that mean?
That's the question. What does that mean?
Shlomo's going to build the Bumos of avodah zarah.
All right.
That's what it says.
Yes, Shlomo Rabbeinu Hashem.
So the question is, the Gemara doesn't. The Gemara is discussing that. The Gemara asks, "Wait a second, Yoshiyahu destroyed them? Did Asa came and he didn't destroy it? Yehoshaphat didn't destroy it until Yoshiyahu destroyed it? But we know all the avodah zarah in Eretz Yisrael, Asa destroyed and Yehoshaphat destroyed." Says the Gemara, we're comparing the early ones to the late ones. Just like the late ones didn't do it, and we're giving them credit for doing it. In other words, like this: Yoshiyahu did not destroy these bamais. Asa destroyed them. Yehoshaphat destroyed them. But since Yoshiyahu destroyed other things, we're giving him credit for destroying things that he didn't do. So too, Shlomo didn't build the altars. But since he did something else wrong, we're blaming him for another wrong that he didn't do. And the Gemara explains later why. Because he didn't protest when they were built. Okay? But we're not, without getting into why Shlomo is being held liable for these bamos.
I know, I just wanted
The Gemara asked, what do you mean Yoshiyahu destroyed the bamos? Didn't Asa destroy them? Didn't Yehoshaphat destroy them? So Tosfos asks, why didn't the Gemara answer very simple? Asa and Yehoshaphat wanted to give their grandson Yoshiyahu Machon Maggid Harakiah. The same way the Gemara says in Masechta Chulin, that why didn't they destroy the Nechashas? Please turn off the phones. Why didn't? Right? The same way the Gemara says that why is Chizkiyahu the one destroying the copper snake? Why didn't Asa do it? Why didn't Yehoshaphat do it? The answer is they wanted to give their child an opportunity to be successful. They wanted to give him place to have a mark of distinction. Why didn't the Gemara in Shabbos say that, you know what, Asa could have destroyed the Bamais and Yehoshaphat could have destroyed the Bamais, but they wanted to give Yoshiyahu a stellar also.
That's quite difficult.
Again, no questions. Get this question. Understand the question. The Gemara says in the Masechta Chulin that who destroyed the copper snakes of Moshe Rabbeinu? Chizkiyahu. Why didn't Asa destroy it? Why didn't Yehoshaphat destroy it? What does the Gemara answer? They wanted their kid to have an opportunity, yeah? They wanted their kid. So when the Gemara in Shabbos asks almost an identical question of when it says Yoshiyahu destroyed the Bamais of Shlomo, the Gemara asks, why didn't Asa destroy it? Why didn't Yehoshaphat destroy it? Why didn't the Gemara give the answer? They could have, but they wanted to give the opportunity to Yoshiyahu. Why didn't the Gemara answer? Makom hanichu lo yavosav. That is the question of Tosfos. And Tosfos in the Masechta Chulin asks, Tema, look at number 8, to lo mashani hachi, that we don't give this answer, Parak Bama Behema, in Gemara and Shabbos, where the Gemara is talking about the Bamais that were in Yerushalayim that Shlomo built, and Yoshiyahu destroyed. When the Gemara asks, Asa came, and why didn't he destroy it? Why didn't the Gemara answer, Makom hanichu lo yavosav l'sgader by? Says Tosfos, yeah, you want to give your kid a stellar, but that's only, you can't do a wrong thing. If you have a mitzvah to do, you can't say, I'll let my son do it. Amen. If you have a mitzvah to do, you got to do it yourself. So by the snake of Chizkiyahu HaMelech, by the snake of Moshe, you know why they didn't destroy it? That's different. God told them to make that snake. God told Moshe to make the snake. And therefore the earlier generations thought that we can't destroy something that God told Moshe to make. People are straying after it. Fine. Phones off, please. But why? Why? Because if God told Moshe Rabbeinu to make it, the earlier generations felt it would be inappropriate to destroy it. But the Bamais of Shlomo HaMelech, nobody told them to make these Bamos. These were unauthorized Avodah Zarah. So then, that's something that we cannot say, well, they could have destroyed it themselves, but they left an opportunity for their children. In other words, what Tosfos is saying is that something which is absolutely forbidden, you got to do it yourself. You got to destroy it yourself. You can't leave for your children to do. But in a case where there perhaps is a reason not to destroy it, like in the case of the copper snake of Moshe Rabbeinu, so then the earlier generations mistakenly thought that they were not allowed to destroy it, and therefore they were able to give room to Chizkiyahu to destroy it himself.
There's a sure, because if Yehoshaphat and Asa,
yeah,
the Gemara is saying if they left him, they wanted to give him a stella, so to speak, and they left over the snake.
Yeah. Right?
But they didn't leave just over the snake. The Pasuk tells us in Malachim, the Shibur Samatzelos, the Chor say, why didn't they?
No, those things you could say those only came up for the first time in the times of Chizkiyahu HaMelech.
I mean,
but it was only
they destroyed them, people brought new ones.
Yeah, there were new ones. But it was the Nechash HaNechoshes that it specifically says, Ad Hayamim Ahema Hayivanesim Akachim Loi. To the Nechash HaNechoshes.
So they were so sure that after they destroyed Yehoshaphat and Asa, when they destroyed the bummers that wasn't going to come for the next generation, that they had to leave over the snake in order to give Chizkiyahu.
Yeah. So that's what Tosfos is saying. Tosfos is saying that the distinction between the Gemara in Chulin and the Gemara in Shabbos is the Gemara in Chulin, they felt they could not destroy because this was authorized by the Ribbon Shalom himself, and since it was authorized by the Ribbon Shalom, therefore what? Therefore they felt they couldn't destroy and they left it over for Chizkiyahu. However, Rabbi say, the Gemara in Shabbos that talks about the Bamais of Shlomo, that was completely unauthorized, and that you cannot say Malkam Hanichu Min Hashamayim. The Malbim tells us something very interesting to be able to explain a little bit better why didn't the earlier generations destroy the snake of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that is, if you look for a moment in Chulin Daf Mem Amud Beis, look at number 10. If let's say you have a phone, right? And the Rebbe is getting really upset that the phone is not on vibrate, so I'm going to take care of it. What am I going to do? I'm going to hire a guy to take your phone and worship it as Avodah Zarah. Once it's Avodah Zarah, now you have to burn it, yeah? Could we do that? Let's say I hire somebody to come. I hire a guy, right? I hire.
He's not doing the Avodah Zarah by himself.
Doesn't matter. He's worshiping the Avodah Zarah. Let's say a guy worships your phone as Avodah Zarah.
Another person to worship Avodah Zarah, which is also even.
I'm not saying I'm allowed to do it, but it's really it's aggravating. So I gotta get rid of the phone. So let's say I hire a guy to bow down to the phone. What happens to the phone? Is the phone in Avodah Zarah now? No. He worshipped it.
No.
He worshipped it. He said Allah peanut butter sandwiches, right? He worshipped the phone.
Still not an Avodah Zarah.
Is it an Avodah Zarah?
No.
So halacha is, look in the Gemara in Chulin Daf Mem Amud Beis. Rav Nachman v'Rav Amram v'Rav Yitzchak Amri Ein Adam Oyser Davar She'ein Shalai. You can't answer something that doesn't belong to you. If you bow down to your own phone, so now we gotta destroy it. But you can't bow down to someone else's phone, right? In other words, somebody else cannot prohibit something that doesn't belong to them.
Amen. That's it.
However, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, look at number 11. V'chihada asa ula, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Af al pisha amru hameshtachave lebehemas chaveroi lo yasra. Even if you say you can't answer something that doesn't belong to you, asa ba maisa asra. But if you do an act to it, then you could answer. For example, so I hire the guy to take your phone and build it into his statue. If then he does that, that's the end of the phone. So if you just bow down to someone else's phone, the phone is still his. But if he does an act to it, he could answer something that doesn't belong to him. That is the opinion of Ula. That's the opinion of Ula. And by the way, we know that was the opinion of Chizkiyahu HaMelech. How do we know that was the opinion of Chizkiyahu HaMelech? Because we know that who was Chizkiyahu's father? Achaz. And Achaz had Kalim. And these Kalim of Achaz were made into Avodah Zarah through a Maisa. And Chizkiyahu, we know, burnt them. That means Chizkiyahu holds, like this opinion of Ula, that even though you can't answer something that doesn't belong to you, with a Maisa, you could answer something that doesn't belong to you. But there's another opinion by Rabbi Say. Look in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah Nun Gimel Amud Beis. The Gemara says that Rabbi Yehuda Amarav Yisrael that takes a brick and stands it erect to bow down to it, and a guy comes and bows down to it, it's aser. It becomes aser. Okay, you hear the case?
That's enough of a meister to make it also, just to stand it up.
No, in other words, a Jew took a brick, he stood it up, he was about to bow down to it. If the guy bows down to it, it asers it.
Because it's a meister.
That's already he asked.
Made it through. Oh, so the
Jew was never bow down?
To which the Gemara asks, why does he aser it? Ein adam oiser davar she'eino shalai.
But it's his brick, wasn't it his brick?
No, the Jew stands it up. The Jew's going to bow down to it, and quickly a guy bows down to it.
Before he had a chance.
Before he had a chance, yeah. So the Gemara says he answers it, and the Gemara asks in Avodah Zarah and Gimel Amud Beis, why does he answer it? Ein adam oiser davar she'eino shaloi. So the Ran asked in the name of the Ramban, what do you mean why does he answer it? Maybe he could answer it because he did a Maisa.
It's not his.
Maybe the reason why the guy is answering it is because he did a Maisa. To which the Ran answers, well, apparently this Gemara holds that even if you do a Maisa, you can't answer davar she'eino shaloi.
Even if the guy does a Maisa?
Yeah, even if the guy does a Maisa, the guy can't answer. So in other words, Stamaza in a regular case, I can't do something to I can't serve your item and worship it and make it and render it aser because ein adam oiser davar she'eino shaloi. But if I do a Maisa, that's debatable. Now it's a machlokes whether by doing a Maisa you could aser davar she'eino shaloi. Says the Malbim, you know why the earlier generations did not destroy the Nechash HaNechoshes? Because when God told Moshe to make the Nechash HaNechoshes, Hashem said, Aseh L'cha, make it out of your own property. So who does this Nechoshes belong to? Moshe. So the fact that Jews bow down to it, Ein adam oiser davar she'eino shaloi. But they did a Maisa. The earlier generations held, even if you did a Maisa, still, Ein adam oiser davar she'eino shaloi. And therefore the earlier generations held, there's no reason to destroy this thing. It's not an avodah zarah. You can't answer something that doesn't belong to you. Chizkiyahu HaMelech felt that even though he's not required to destroy it, and he doesn't have to, because again, it didn't belong to Klal Yisrael, it belonged to Moshe Rabbeinu, then Chizkiyahu felt, for the sake of making a lesson out of this situation, he felt the appropriate thing was to burn it. But why didn't the earlier generations do it? They held they were not halachically obligated to do it. Take a look in the Malbim in number 9. Now I would ask, what Maisa did the Jewish people do to it that Chizkiyahu paskined that since it's a Maisa, you could aser davar she'eino shaloi? What was the Maisa? They just bowed down to it.
And there's another question also. There's so many generations. What do you mean it still belonged to Moshe? Moshe wasn't around for hundreds of years already.
Maybe it belonged to his family?
Obviously, they made it hefker. It was sitting around. They didn't say that it belonged to anybody.
Why don't you ask a question why Shlomo says Lahoya Shalom Hashem Elokov?
Okay, that's a very interesting topic. That's a very interesting topic. But let's see this. So the Malbim says like, take a look at number 9. He says, Perish HaToises B'chulin, Sha'asa v'Yoshafa loy bi'arum. Asa and Yoshafa did not destroy them. Shatov b'nei shenasa al pi hadibor. Nira perushai. You could say like this. Ki yesh plukta b'chulin, there's a machlokes in chulin on daf memalef, it's really mem amud beis. Im adam oisa davar she'eino shaloi b'maisa zita. Ula avodah zarah on daf nun dalet it says, Ula says, even though it says that someone who's mishtachaveh to the behemoth of his friend, he doesn't answer it. But if you do an act, you answer it. From the fact that, what's the source? That Chizkiyahu was goynez the klishares that Achaz served for avodah zarah. What does that show? That if you use something for avodah zarah, not just bow down to it, if you use it for avodah zarah, oh, that's the thing. The Jews did do a Maisa. They were makater. They offered incense. So they offered incense, that's more than bowing down. That's considered a full-fledged Maisa. So the Malbim points out that how do I know that if you do a Maisa, you could aser davar she'eino shaloi, from the fact that Chizkiyahu was goynez, the klishares, that his father Achaz served as avodah zarah. So says the Malbim, that means Chizkiyahu holds that when you do a Maisa, you could aser davar she'eino shaloi. But there are opinions, he quotes, who holds that even if you do a Maisa, you don't aser davar she'eino shaloi. So says the Malbim, it could be the earlier generations held that even if you do a Maisa, you don't aser davar she'eino shaloi, and that's why the earlier generations did not destroy the snake of Moshe Rabbeinu. But Chizkiyahu l'shitase, who we know already destroyed the kelim that Achaz served for avodah zarah, so he holds that when you do a Maisa, you can aser davar she'eino shaloi. That's why he destroyed this Nachash HaNechoshes. By the way,
And everything that Yehoshaphat and Esau destroyed, they were all the shalom? I mean, you have to imagine that some of the things they destroyed.
no, all those things that they
were
destroyed
license.
were not private property. They were just, public avodah zarah. So Rabbi said, just it comes out according to this. The Sha'asar Tshuva Sha'al Umeshiv points out that this would be a completely different answer to Tosfos' question. Tosfos asked, why was it that by the copper snake, the Gemara asked, why didn't they destroy it? And they said, they left room for their children. And Tosfos asked, so why, when it comes to the Bamos of Shlomo, didn't the Gemara also say, why didn't Asa and Yehoshaphat destroy it? Why didn't the Gemara say they left room for their children? So the Shalom Mesha says, very simple. The Nachash HaNechoshes belonged to Moshe Rabbeinu. It was private property. If it's private property, they were not required to destroy it. But the altars of Shlomo, these were just regular avodah zarah. Of course they had to destroy it themselves. They couldn't leave that for their children to destroy. By the way, if you look, let's go back to the Radak for a moment. The Radak says that the Radak brings down the opinion that since Moshe Rabbeinu made it out of his own property, so it wasn't really Asur. And therefore the earlier generations were not required to destroy it. Now, the Radak has the possibility that it could be that Asa and Yehoshaphat did not destroy it because in their times people were not worshipping it, people were not serving it. It was only in the times of Chizkiyahu that they were serving it. Now that's not so mashma in the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ki ad hayom imahema hayu bnei Yisrael mekatrim lo." So says the Malvim. Listen to this, a beautiful diuk. The pasuk ends that why did they destroy the snake? Vayikra lai nechushtan. What does nechushtan mean? Our snake. Says a Malbim. What do you mean their snake? It's not their snake. It was Moshe's snake. Because they did a Maisa, now they are allowed to Asur Davar Sheino Shalai, so it attains the status of something that's theirs that now they could Asur. In other words, Nechushtan means our snake. So let's just clarify. What are the parameters?
They did that generations before, you would assume, not just by Chizkiyahu.
No, but Chizkiyahu, until then, they paskin that even when the Maisa is done, you can't destroy something that doesn't belong to you. It was Chizkiyahu who held that when a Maisa is done, then it becomes like Davar Shalai. That's why they called it Nechushtan. So what are the parameters then of this concept of Makom Hinichulai Avosav Lehisgader Bay? In other words, when do we say that his forefather, what is Chizkiyahu saying? That why did he do it and no earlier generations did it? Well, his earlier generations wanted to leave room for him to have a mark of distinction. But the question is, when does that apply, when does that not apply? So based on Tosfos, based on what we're learning is, that something that's full-fledged avodah zarah, you can't say, I'll leave it to my kids, I'll let them do something good. But if it's something where you're not technically halachically required to act, then that's something you can leave for your children to be able to accomplish.
How do we know that even for the children, if they're not allowed to, then they're not chayav to do it because it's not public avodah zarah, then it's going to be public avodah zarah in the children's time, and they're going to have the same issue.
No, so Chizkiyahu held that even though maybe
but
he's
his
not...
parents didn't know that. The parents didn't know that Chizkiyahu's going to change the way he passed.
In other words, they gave him the opportunity to grab a hold of this as a mark of distinction. Just want to bring in that this concept of Makom Hinichulai Lehisgader was the main motivation of the Radzina Rebbe in rediscovering Cheles. Why? Because he starts off his sefer by posing the following question. He says, if my great-grandfather didn't have tcheles and never found tcheles, and my grandfather and my father, and all the Gedolei Yisrael of earlier generations, so who am I to reinstitute the tcheles? Says Radzina Rebbe, all the way in the beginning of his very first volume, look at number 15. Omnam That which my forefathers never were awakened to this, Asher Ketanam, that the smallest of them was much greater than me, he says that's not a wonder. Why? Because if you look in Sefer Malachim, Chizkiyahu ground up the copper snake, because until his days the people were worshipping it. And the Gemara says in Chulin, is it possible that Asa came along and Yoshaphat came along and they didn't destroy it? Says the Radzina Rebbe, right? You hear David? It always comes back to Tchelas. It always comes back to Tchelas. Why? Well, he said like this. Let's make a kavachamer. If there we're talking about possible pitfall of the snake, that there were nichshal in it, and even so God did not rouse their hearts to take care of the problem and to rectify it, and he hid from them the halacha that they should destroy it. Certainly, the Radzina Rebbe says, when it comes to not avodah zara, just lack of performance of a mitzvah saseh, it could be, says the Radzina Rebbe, God, the same way He hid from the earlier generations their obligation to destroy it, God hid from the earlier generations, from the earlier gedolim, the mitzvah to find the tchelas, until to leave room for a small person like me to have his mark of distinction. And this was the motivation and the impetus of the Radzina Rebbe to try to rediscover the tchelas. And for more adventures with the Radzina Rebbe, stay tuned to Mirz Hashem Wednesday.
Can I ask you a question?
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.